Hey everyone! So in this quick video, I'm going to talk about the four possible relationships between science and religion. So it'll be a quick, just little video on that. Now, as we all know, there is a role that science plays in our lives as well as religion to some extent, maybe more for some versus others. But now there are four possible relationships between these two domains. So what I mean by that is like a person can take one of these four stances when it comes to how science and religion relate to one another. So one stance, and I'm going to write this in the chat, a person can take, is that when science and religion come into conflict with one another, science always trumps religion. So when science and religion say contradictory things about, let's say, the origins of humanity. Let's say religion says we were made in God's image and God created us all at once, and science says we evolved, from originally primates and back all the way to single cell organisms. When these two kind of competing theories come into conflict, here's a position a person can take. Science just should be the way science is correct and religion is incorrect when the conflict occurs. Okay, so this type of person would be like more scientifically minded, maybe like a science professor or something like that. Now, a person can also take the opposite position. So now imagine science and religion, and now you can look at the chat, come into conflict. And a person can take this position. In these cases where they say contradictory things about the world, I'm going to side with religion. So I'm going to take, scripture and, the Bible or the Quran or the Torah or the Bhagavad Gita or whatever. I'm going to take this religious text as primary and fundamental for informing me about the world, and science as secondary. So perhaps, thinking back to the history of science, when we see, Copernicus disagree with the church about planetary orbits, someone during this time who takes the second position would go with the church saying, okay, I agree with the reasoning of the church that the Earth must be the center of planetary orbits and over and above the reasoning of the scientists. Okay, so a person can take this position. This would be like a religious, maybe a more fundamentalist, or a person who just thinks religion is like the primary source of knowledge and truth about the world, and that science, I guess, therefore, is not as reliable as telling us things about the world as religion is. Okay, now the next two positions are supposed to be more conciliatories, or like kind of trying to make science and religion more compatible. So under the condition, so for all of these positions, under the condition that science and religion disagree about some claim about the world, here's another position a person can take. They just deal with different domains. So a person can think, look, science, that is what guides us when it comes to facts about the world. When it comes to just facts about our everyday world and, what we're observing and how things work in our world, I go with science. Religion concerns an entirely different domain. Religion doesn't concern everyday features of our world. Instead, religion concerns something more mystical, like the non-observable, the non-physical. So things like souls and the afterlife, and things that can't be observed, like a soul or afterlife, or God, or the devil, or whatever, right? Religion is in this kind of religion concerns these non-observable, more mystical things, and science concerns the discretely observable features of the universe. And so they deal just with different domains of reality. One deals with like reality that we can observe, science, and then religion deals with maybe this other reality that's non-observable, like the afterlife or heaven or hell or God or whatever. Okay. And now the fourth position is that when science and religion come into conflict, it may seem like a conflict, but it's not actually. Science and religion are actually compatible. Now let me make this clear. So how is that the case? I think a person who takes position 4 would tend to think that we are meant to read religious texts as metaphorical. We're supposed to read them as metaphorical. So like when we read about, Adam and Eve, or when we read about Noah's Ark, or, when we read about Brahman in the Bhagavad Gita, or when we read about, et cetera, Moses, really, we're supposed to read these biblical or Quran based or, religious text based entries as stories. They're like metaphors. They're like supposed to be like moral guidance, but they're not supposed to be thought of as literal. Like, Noah's Ark, it didn't literally happen, or Adam and Eve didn't literally happen. These are like metaphors for some kind of moral teachings, and that's their function. And so science tells us, more about like the real concrete facts in the world. And then religion is still compatible with science because we read the religious text metaphorically. And people who tend to take this position also try to show that there are certain features of religion and religious texts that fit with science. So, for example, in the Bible, somewhere it says about how we arrived, we're created and generated from like first the source of water. So some people kind of focus on this passage and say like, look, this is actually compatible with a theory of evolution where under the, Darwin's theory of evolution, really we did start as creatures, water dwelling creatures here on planet Earth. That's where we found the first signs of life, within water. So maybe this is a case where we see the religious text saying something metaphorically that fits with science. Okay? So these are the 4 possible positions a person can take when it comes to science and religion. I would love to hear what position you take. It could be maybe something you can include in your writing assignment, though you don't have to. Okay? Thanks, everyone. Bye.